Shut up and sit down.
And good evening, everyone. This is a very special PSVG OT. We're here to have some hard conversations. And for that, I've got my co-host, the hostess with the mostest, Mr. Coach Mo. How are you tonight?
I'm good, bud. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, All things considered, I'm doing well.
Yep.
And we also brought along for the ride my other co-host on PSXP, Mr. Delvin Cox. How are you today?
I'm doing good as I can be doing.
I hear that 100%, man.
It's
totally
super weird.
Understand.
Like have both your mistresses right here in the same room at the same time.
I was the first one though, so I was the older mistress.
Yeah.
It's funny. That. I didn't even think about that. And if you really
DC is the new young thing. I'm just the old one. That's rough. That's rough, man.
If you really want to get into the details, I've got my third mistress behind the curtain producing in Donnie from Game Tech. I didn't even think about that. Oh, that's funny.
Oh man. I like the OT better this way when I don't have to do any planning.
Yeah, well, I mean, with all the things that are happening right now, with the death of George Floyd, the protests, everything, I knew we had to say something. I knew we had to come on. I knew that this was going to be a show that the OT had to do. So I reached out to you guys and was like, hey, we got to say something. We got to have a conversation. We got to have a hard conversation, about everything that's going on, that's transpiring in our country right now, that's also being protested globally. And I couldn't think of anybody better than to have you two here with me to tackle this hard conversation. So first and foremost, thank you for both of you to agreeing to be able to come on and take some time out of your evening to sit down and just have a brief chat. We've been having a lot of conversation in our Discord, in our mostly in our random chat and then in our offline private chat about everything that's been transpiring over this past week. We've seen Donnie on the front lines working 12, 13-hour days, just giving us a play-by-play from time to time about what's going on. And we've all been on social media. Some of us have taken breaks. We've had some really nice, difficult conversations in our Discord. And the beautiful thing is I can say that entire PSVG staff is pretty much on the same page in the fact that Black Lives Matter. And I'm just so happy about that we're in the same place. We can have a conversation. We can break down barriers and everyone is willing to actually listen, because that is something that is consistently lost in this conversation, is the fact that when somebody says Black Lives Matter, there are people who just don't want to listen to that and understand what that message is actually trying to get across. So again, thank you to the both of you for joining me on this journey.
Anytime, fam. Anytime,
definitely.
So as we all know, the OT is a conversational podcast. So we typically start out with, a question that, elicits a little conversation, a little deep conversation from all of us. So the first question that we're going to start with tonight is, when was the first time you experienced racism? And I'm going to go ahead and start with that so I can give you guys a couple of seconds to, get together your thoughts. Because just like the regular OT, they have no idea the questions that I'm going to ask today. So I'll go ahead and start with it. The first time that I experienced racism was probably a lot later on in life than people probably would assume, just being that I am African American. I live in Los Angeles. I was born and raised here in LA. But my upbringing was very different. And also just being born in the 80s, there was racism, but it wasn't anywhere near as in your face as it was previously. Like, we seemed to be like out of the civil rights era and going into stuff to where it wasn't as prevalent. It wasn't as in your face. At least when I was where I was at in LA. I grew up in pretty much middle to upper middle class area in LA, pretty much in the dab smack middle of LA. Like, Beverly Hills was a stone throw away. The Crenshaw district was a stone throw away. Like, everything was really close. South Central was actually rather far from where I grew up at. So I didn't experience racism until much later in life, like junior high, to be perfectly honest. And it was in a very different way. It wasn't, somebody calling me the N-word. Somebody being just mad disrespectful in some kind of way. It was way less overt than that. As a child, like elementary school, my first school was a predominantly Black private school that was really, really focused on academics. So by the time, and I was only there till first grade. So by the time I got to like second grade, I was pretty much advanced. I ended up being in a third grade with a couple of second graders class for my second grade. And this was a predominantly Korean school. So I go from being with all Black kids to pretty much predominantly Korean, some white, some Black. And throughout that entire time, like in elementary, there wasn't really any kind of racist overtones that I felt at all as a kid. Like, there wasn't anything. The closest thing we had was when we had the Rodney King riot. That was probably the biggest thing that first opened my eyes to racism, but it wasn't something that I really was expressed towards me or I really experienced it. I was still kind of young. I understood what they did to Rodney King was wrong, but I didn't quite understand the whole racism overtone that was happening. I understand that there were riots, people were upset because Rodney King got beat, but at that time I didn't really understand that it was because he was Black. It took a while for that to really set in. So that was the first time I really experienced any kind of racism and started to understand a little bit more about the world that we lived in. It was a really, really just crazy time being able to walk outside and just see ashes from everything burning. My mom telling me, you can't go outside. You can't go down to 7-Eleven. You can't go across the street. Like, no, if you're going to play, you're going to play in the backyard because stuff is hitting the fan. And my parents didn't really explain anything to me. I saw the stuff on the news and everything and had to deduce most of it. I didn't really have anybody to explain exactly what was going on. Unlike now, like your parent, like as a parent myself, like we explain, like, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. My parents pretty much just, didn't really say much. So that was really my first interaction with it. And then later on, once I got to junior high, it was really, really weird. I went to a much more diverse junior high than my elementary school because being in the middle of LA, like everything was there. Like, we had Hispanic, we had Black, we had white, we had Asian. There was literally a melting pot. So I didn't ever go anywhere and I was the only Black person. Not in that part of LA at all. Like, there was everything. And getting into junior high, every group was kind of segregated. So to where I'm normally used to being around a lot of Asian kids, a lot of white kids, and a couple of Black kids, now it's this huge melting pot of Hispanics, Blacks, whites, everything. And that was when you started to see the more racism come out, the pockets, the segregation of all the groups. Like, all the Black kids were hanging out together. You had the Hispanics hanging out together. You never really saw the Asians or the white folks, which was really weird. And that also continued in high school. Like, you knew they were there. They would be in your classes, but you didn't really see them at lunch and recess. You're like, where'd they go? I know they're here. Where they at? But in junior high, that's when you start noticing. When you start going to the mall, and every time you go to the mall, you're getting followed in the store, where your other friends ain't. Like, if you're with the white person, they ain't being bothered, but they constantly follow you throughout the mall. You're constantly being looked at. You walk into a grocery store and you're being looked at like, okay, what you getting? Do you need some help? The constant asking, do you need help? What are you looking for? Can I help you find something? That type of just really subtle racism is just, it's so irritating. It's the little microaggressions that you don't really think about it in the very moment, like the actual, like when it happens. But then as soon as you leave the store, you walk out and you look back, you're like, man, that was racist. And they just followed me around like I was gonna steal something when I'm actually in here buying stuff, you know, especially when I went to the Santa Monica Mall. Oh man, you go there, they following you everywhere. So that was like my real first brush with racism. So I'm gonna let y'all take over and tell me your first experience. Who wants to go first? I'm gonna let y'all go.
So I'm kind of torn between there are three situations that I remember, and I think the one that is the most prevalent in my mind was so my daughter is named after a really good friend of mine who passed away of cancer. His name's Kalani. Kalani is half Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and half black. His dad was black and his mom's Hawaiian. And I lived with them for like a year and a half in high school just because I didn't have anywhere to stay. And me and Kalani were always very, very close. And Kalani had this really beat up Honda Accord. Like, you know how when someone thinks they know how to soup a car up, but they don't? So like it's like a spoiler and they painted the rims themselves. Like that's what Kalani did to this Honda Accord, and there was no heater in this thing. Like it was busted. He kept trying to tell me it's because he put a supercharger in that. And I was like, no, you didn't. Like it's just broken. Like stop lying to me. And one night after a game, he was like, hey, I know you want to go home because I didn't like going to the parties and stuff. I'd much rather go home and like make myself a really big sandwich and fall asleep, like watching film, like just how I've always been. And he goes, drive home for me. I was like, all right. And so I had my big puffy jacket on and I had my hood on because I'm in this car with no heater and it's like, you know, November in Oregon, which isn't like super cold, but it's like 35 out. So like almost freezing, right? So I'm driving home and I get pulled over. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got pulled over. It's not my car. Okay, I had my driver's license. I don't know if Kalani has insurance or not. And I roll the window down, and the officer goes, oh, have a good day. I was like, oh, that was weird. So I drive the rest of the way home. Like 4 days later, I'm in the car with Kalani, and it was like a brutal practice. I just remember being like dead tired. I have the same puffy coat on. I don't have my hood up, but you know, like when you lay the seat down the Honda Accord, that you're like almost invisible. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And like I'm just like, oh, my legs. Like I'm complaining. I'm like, why don't you have a heater? Like we need to spend some money and fix this thing. Like, dude, you're killing me. Like it is too cold out. My breath is freezing coming out of my mouth. And we get pulled over again. And he goes, don't put your seat up. Let the officer see you. I go, what are you talking about? Like, not a big deal. I got pulled over like the other day in this car. And the officer comes up, much different demeanor, and yells for me to put the seat up, looks at me and goes, oh, this is your car. I was like, no, it's his car. I was just driving it the other day. So he makes Kalani get out the car. Asks Kalani for his registration and his insurance, his license. And I was like, I just got pulled over by you like 4 days ago. And you just said, have a good day. Like, what's the issue? And he ends up giving him a ticket for his taillight. We get to his house.
The taillight ticket.
We get to his house, and I'm like, your taillight works fine. Like, this is garbage. So I actually made him, he was like, I'll just pay the $150. Like, no, you're not paying $150, you idiot. And he goes, you don't understand, big guy. And Kalani knew that I'm the same guy who didn't know he had gotten dumped for like 4 months because she, you know, I was dating this girl my freshman year. We broke up, but I didn't know we broke up. I thought we were still dating. Like he knew that's who I was. So like he knew like I just didn't catch on to certain things. Like because if you don't know, you don't know. Yeah. And he's like, no. I'm like, no, we're fighting this, my guy. Like I was with you. We can show him that the taillight works. It didn't magically fix. So we went and pled the case, and the judge actually knocked like $100 off. So like a $30 ticket. I was like, well, that's not justice, but whatever. Kalani gets pulled over 2 weeks later. Exact same cop. Again, I'm in the car. Lets us go. Right? And I didn't realize it until Kalani said something at graduation. Like we were at the grad party and we're sitting there talking. And he was like, I'm just so glad to get out of this neighborhood. And I'm like, yeah, cops do not like you. And he goes, well, that doesn't change no matter where I go, big guy. And like, that was the moment I was like, huh. Oh, yeah. And like he kind of put the puzzle pieces together for me. And I just remember being just kind of shocked because like it didn't make sense. Like, this is a guy that I'd gone through horrible workouts with, that we had like battled and we won a district championship together that brought pride to our area. And yet because he was black, well, half black, he wasn't equal for some reason. And it devastated me. Like, it's something that it kind of knocked me down. And I remember like he goes, like he's patting on the back and he's like, no, it's okay, big guy, it's okay. And I'm like, that's just the kind of person he was. Like, he was so worried about taking care of other people, but this is something he dealt with his whole life, and I'd only like barely understood it. And I'll never forget learning it that way. So
yeah, I think every black person has a taillight story. I swear.
Yeah.
yeah.
All our tail don't work apparently.
Right. None of them. Everybody's got a broken tail light. It's ridiculous. Yeah. What about you, Devin? Let me know your story.
Well, mine's a little bit more kind of darker, I guess. Like, I told this over Twitter. What happened? When I was young, I was like in first grade. My mom moved us to Orlando for like a year. So I went from going to a school that was predominantly black to a school where I was like one of the only black kids in the school. And it was interesting because a lot of these white kids that went to school, you can tell they never saw a black kid before. So they were very interesting, always asking questions and stuff to me and things like that. And someone hang out with me and stuff. It was cool. It was interesting. But I remember one specific day I want to say I was on a swing. And this white kid comes off, pushes me off the swing, and calls me a dirty N-word for no reason whatsoever. I get up, I punch the kid in the nose, break his nose. Teacher gets called. We get called to the principal office. The kid gets to go back to class. I get sent home suspended for 3 days. And I got in trouble with my mom, not because of what happened, because I didn't want to tell her about it, because I was embarrassed and ashamed that like I punched this kid, not realizing like what he did. And when I told my mom, she was like, I'm not mad for what you did. I'm mad because you didn't tell me. And she had to go out to the school and talk to him. And they got rid of the suspension, but still, it shouldn't have been one in the first place. And it's just kind of one of those things that just kind of stick with you. Like, you have these moments in life that you just never forget, no matter how hard you try. Or sometimes you don't even want to forget them. You want to remember it because that's kind of like a lesson learned. And that was me being older now. I wonder, like, what was they teaching that kid? Like, that was first grade. And for him to be saying that to another black kid, saying it to a black kid just out of the blue and push him, like, I hadn't had barely any interaction with this kid whatsoever. But he saw me and saw an N-word and felt like it was okay to call me that and push me. Yeah.
Yeah. And see, that was the reason that I asked this question, because I saw your tweet and I wanted to just bring some levity to the fact that growing up in all over different places, like, you experience it so differently, like being in the South in Orlando where you were is a very different experience where I was, but there's still racism and it's everywhere. It's like, no matter which part of the world you live in, which part of America you live in, like, it's there. And there's some places that it's superly overt, like in Delvin's case, or it's something that's just a microaggression where I'm at, or it's the taillight where Mo experienced, and it's something that he never even thought about. And until you see it, a lot of people don't realize how racist people still are. Like, and this is what first grade for you, Delvin. That was like a million years ago because you like 900,
That's true.
But in real talk, like, that's what 30 years ago, 35 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
We really haven't made progress. Like my daughter got called the N-word at her school not too long, maybe last year. It's like, have we really made any progress at all? I remember feeling like these type of conversations, these thoughts weren't really in my headspace in the 90s, early 2000s. Like it felt, like we were making some progress. And then come to find out, we really ain't progressed at all. Like we still fighting the same fights that our parents fought, that they parents fought. Like the one thing about this protest is that it feels different. Like it is not just in a couple of states, it's not just in the South, it's not just here or there. Like there has been a protest in every single state in this country. And not only do we have protests there, but we have them globally. So for once, this actually feels different. It feels united. And I am so prayerful that there will actually be some kind of change that happens from these protests and the fact that we're not letting up, because it's not just, it's also Breonna Taylor. It's also Ahmaud Arbery, like all of these different people. Like we're not just stopping once, the other three officers are actually, brought up on charges. Like we're looking for that conviction. And then it's like on to the next one. Like we're not stopping just this point. Like we're trying to really make change because it needs to happen. It's so far overdue. It's not even funny.
I think that it's interesting to see how everything's going right now. And we went from the whole Colin Kaepernick thing where people were so vehemently against it and made it seem like him kneeling was un-American, to where we at now, where you have the NFL like pseudo issuing an apology and saying Black Lives Matter, when not too long ago, we would never even think we'd hear them say something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's growth. I think it's progress. I think the world is waking up, and I feel like we've had too many of these situations where we see the same results over and over again, a Black life lost, and it's always seemed like it was an excuse for it. And now it's like, we don't care about your excuses. Like even now, as I watch the news and I watch Twitter, it's sickening to see. Like people are actually trying to make excuses for it, for George Floyd's death, and it's crazy. It is like vehemently getting backlash. Like I've seen some quote unquote political pundits saying, well, why are you guys rallying behind George Floyd? He wasn't exactly a good person. And I'm like, this ain't the time, this ain't the place. And they are getting backlash for that, as they should. And it's almost like people are trying to stop the movement, but it's gotten to the point where it's so big now, you can't retain it. Like, only thing you can try to do is move the goalpost, but that's not even working. Everything they've done so far to try to stop this movement and kind of quill it down has kind of made it stronger. We've seen them beat people who are peacefully protesting. We've seen them try to blame it on the rioters. We've seen them do everything in their playbook that they usually do that works, that silences these protests usually, and none of it's working. If anything, it's gotten louder and more visible. And I think that's just the sign of this climate today. Like people are tired of it. People are sick of seeing the same thing over and over again. And it's time for change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, thank God for the camera phone, right? Like everybody's recording everything. Like you ain't getting away with this crap anymore. We're sick and tired of it. Like we are done. We are done having these conversations. You're gonna have to address the issues. You're gonna have to address the videos. Like y'all ain't right. The brutality issue, it needs to end. Like it blows my mind when you think about that Kaepernick was trying to shed light on this years ago. And if only somebody would have, instead of trying to silence him or make it about disrespecting the flag, which he said the first time he did it, this is not about the flag. I'm not disrespecting the flag. I've spoken to veterans. I'm kneeling to bring a light to what's going on with police brutality. This is no disrespect to the flag. And it's just like nobody wanted to hear that. Everything was shifted to where you're disrespecting the flag, but nobody wanted to listen. And that's the problem. Nobody ever wants to listen. When you say Black Lives Matter and you get the response, but all lives matter, you're not listening. Because Black Lives Matter, as we've said time and time again, does not mean other lives don't. It doesn't mean all lives don't matter. It means listen to me. Listen to why we are saying this. Instead of shutting it down and retorting with all lives matter, why don't you ask me why I'm saying that? Ask me why I have, ask why do you feel the need to kneel, Kaepernick? Like, actually listen. Have a conversation about why we are saying that, why we are feeling the way we feel. And when you don't listen and you respond with all lives matter, that just goes right into our point of why it feels like Black lives don't matter, because you refuse to listen to everything that we're trying to tell you, everything that we're trying to show you, and it has erupted into what's going on right now.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the all lives matter thing, it's frustrating to me because one is disingenuous. It is 100% disingenuous in terms of all lives matter, because we don't say only Black lives matter. That has never been said. That has never been uttered. That has never been a statement even thought of. It's saying, hey, we matter. Black lives matter. Stop gunning us down. And then when people say all lives matter, it's almost like in this situation when we're talking about Black people, all lives matter. Because just a few weeks ago when we were dealing with a pandemic, people were literally saying, you know what, if a few people die because of we opening up early, that's not a problem. We can deal with that collateral damage. But now when we're talking about the deaths of young Black men, we're like, no, everybody matters. No, it doesn't work like that. And I feel like America needs to wake up, and this is their wake-up call. And it's interesting to me because, and you guys can both attest to this, for years now, African Americans have been saying, hey, all these racist monuments need to come down. This is offensive. They shouldn't be there. The Confederate Army lost. They were traitors to our country. Why do we still have these up? And forever and the day they've been saying, no, they have to stay up. They have to stay up. They have to stay up. This is our history and stuff like that. They're important. Now, once everything happened to happen here was the protesting, the riots. It's been going on for 8 days now? Now everybody's reconsidering things. Now these monuments are coming down, and we're seeing we're seeing progress.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's sad that I don't agree with rioting. I'm not a fan of it personally, but it's sad that we have to get to the point where we're tearing up stuff for people to listen. And the people say, maybe we should fix what we're doing wrong. And I get that people are mad. They're like, hey, they're rioting and they're tearing up stuff. One, it's not Black people. It's not all Black people doing that. So don't stop that narrative right there. And two, people are angry because they've been saying the same thing for decades now at this point. And it's been ignored. And eventually, when you keep ignoring people, they're going to revolt. This country was started off of the fact that we revolted from another place. Like, if anything you know about America is one thing we're good at is revolting.
Yep.
We will revolt in a minute and break forth and do what we need to do to do the right thing. And I think that this is that. Like, Black people just gotten tired of it. And not only Black people, just
everybody.
Americans in general has gotten sick and tired of it. They don't want to see it anymore. Like, how often can we see these same stories and people getting gunned down and the cops get off or choked out? Like, after a while, that gets like too much. And now it's gotten to that point where like, no, enough is enough. This has to be fixed now.
Absolutely. It's so funny that you bring up the Confederate, like all of that stuff. like they talk about this as our heritage, but why would you want that to be your heritage? Like, why would you want it to be about like? Why would you want to be proud of slavery and what that was, and them seceding from the Union to try to uphold something that you're ashamed of? Like, there is so much shame in slavery in that period of time. Like, my daughter's teachers did not want to or didn't know how to teach about slavery during Black History Month because it gives the white children so much shame. She was like, I'm ashamed of this. Like, I don't want to teach this. But yet you have people in the South that like, that's our heritage. Like, we're proud of that. Like, why would you be proud of that? Like, you should be wanting those monuments to come down because that doesn't represent who you are as a person. Like, that is not something to be proud of. So the fact that in 2020 we're still have these up and we're tearing them down, like, that should have been gone a long time ago.
It's literally the equivalent of going in Germany and seeing Hitler statues everywhere.
Yep.
Pretty much.
Yep.
It makes no sense.
Man. The hard conversations.
No, for sure. So like a year and a half ago, I went on that passion project where I wrote about fanboyism, right? Mm-hmm. And that led to me gaining some just education from different scholars about people and how they identify. And that led to me writing a paper last October that my professor actually offered me a job because of. It was in my sports ethics class. We were being talked about just the situations arising in sport. And so my paper is called I Hate White People. I really hope no one takes that the wrong way, because in the paper, it goes on to identify that if your identifying characteristic of yourself is your skin color, then you're only able to identify as a pigment, right? That's it. That is your identity, is your skin pigment, which is the most superficial that you can get. Right. And I put like your identity cannot be based off your political view or your faith. And I went into this in this paper. And the main concept that I was trying to broach and explain is that our identities, like what we know of ourselves, shouldn't be based on a word that is associated to something outside of us. Right. Your identity should be, this is what I am. Right. This is when I feel how I feel. This is what I am. This is the intrinsic thing for what I am. It's not extrinsic. There's no reward on it. And so I constantly find myself just in shock and awe when I'm going through and seeing people talk about this stuff, is because, they're trying to go, well, it's Democrat versus Republican. No, it's human beings versus racists. And that's what I've been explaining to my students. Like, if you hate somebody based off of skin pigment, that means that there is nothing more to you. You have no identity, right? You are soulless. And that's where this problem gets into, and trying to understand it, is that we're constantly looking at people trying to find this way to identify themselves. And I really think that morality is the missing issue, right? It's that thing that's not taught in school. Mm-hmm. It's that thing that when you look at what they do at police academies, is not being spent anywhere near enough time on, right? Last week, I had a conversation with my football players. I said, listen, if you ever get pulled over, you're going to open your phone and you're going to call Coach Mo, and you're going to put on speakerphone. And the moment any of you call me on the phone, I'm opening my phone, I'm starting recording. And I'm just going to tell the police officer that I am Coach Robert Mahoney at this high school. This is my player. And I am here documenting this entire conversation, right? And when I told my kids that, they're like, well, Coach, do you hate the police? I'm like, no. I just think they're lacking morality. I think that they identify as cops. And if you identify only as a cop's job is to catch the bad guy, quote unquote, right? And I think that identity issue is what's leading us down the roads we're going down, is that these officers don't have a moral identity. They don't have a compass inside of them that says this is what actually protecting the people of this city is. It doesn't revolve around skin pigment. It revolves around morality of protecting everyone. And I just keep finding myself shook because I don't know what the answer is, right? I don't know what more I can do to help and what more I can do to speak, because at some point in time, you have to start reaching people's hearts. And I think that's one of the hardest things we're ever going to do as a country. I think that's going to be an issue that's going to take more than riots. It's going to take like literally sitting down and having those really tough conversations in rooms that nobody wants to be in.
Absolutely, 100%. The hard talks. Like I think about, like you just talked about the moral compass, and it makes me think about in Buffalo when those two officers like shoved that 75-year-old man who fell flat back on his head and started bleeding from his ears, and the cops just kind of kept walking and kind of stepped over him like it didn't happen. What about that is protecting, like serve and protect? Like, why would you think that that's okay? Your sole purpose as an officer is to uphold the law and to serve and protect. Yet you just pushed a 75-year-old man and watched him fall and started bleeding from the ground. The statement was that he tripped and fell, but people, they just kind of kept stepping over him like that was okay. And then that whole like emergency response team, they all resigned because they felt like the other two were being unfairly treated. Where's the looking inward? Where's the accountability? Like you talk about reaching your heart, like that type of moment is a total like rip yourself, take a look at the hard look in the mirror at yourself and figure out like, what am I doing?
Yeah,
you were saying, Delvin?
Learned behavior. That's all it is, really. That unfortunately these police officers are taught these bad habits that they have in terms of like that whole choke maneuver that they were doing with the foot on the neck. That's something that they were taught. Because I don't know if you saw it, like there was another video of another officer in a completely different area doing the same move to another black person. These are things that they are taught. This is learned behavior, and I think that we have to break these police officers of this learned behavior because it's a problem. They have been taught to handle situations a certain way when it comes to African Americans, because we've seen multiple times that when white people or other white races do these similar acts, they don't get treated this way at all. And that's a problem. I feel like it's sad to say that African Americans get targeted. We get targeted. Yeah. We're treated more aggressively. And when we ask what's wrong, it escalates. When we say, hey, why are you stopping me? Why are you trying to arrest me? What's going on? What did I do wrong? It escalates and we get hurt for asking questions. And that's a problem. That's a problem with society. No one should ever get hurt for asking a police officer, what did I do wrong?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why are you detaining me, officer? Like, what did I do? And yeah, you're right. It escalates. It's so funny how that happens. And just to clarify something, was just let known by chat that the officers that resigned actually resigned because the union wouldn't cover their legal fees, which I think is also absolutely ridiculous. Why would they cover their legal fees like that? Kind of the whole purpose of the union, and that's a whole other conversation. Man. Just
it's heartbreaking. Sad to see.
It is.
And the worst thing about this is that I'm seeing now is a lot of these stories, like with all this going on, we're still seeing cops doing crappy stuff. Like you would think that this one video that went viral that the police are literally seen killing an African American male, they would stop doing this stuff. But all through these protests and riots, you're seeing them do similar acts of violence, acting like the thugs that they call us.
Right.
It's insane.
It truly, truly is. It's so upsetting and so just disheartening to know that these are the people that are supposed to be protecting everyone. And it's like you see all this and yet you still, you don't have any compassion, like, to be like, okay, we need to change this behavior. And I can understand feeling like I think the job, the career of an officer is not an easy one. It's not something that should be taken lightly. Like these people are literally putting their lives on the line every day when they go out into the field. Like it's a life or death situation. And I can understand that at some point maybe you become either desensitized to it or you feel like you're not appreciated for the work that you do, but you're still out there to serve and protect. And if you can't hold on to that, then you need to step away. Like,
No.
I think that the cops, their shifts can sometimes be so long and you see so much darkness that there should be way more downtime, way more just space out of just the getting down into the dark nitty gritty. And maybe they would have more compassion. They would see us more, see everyone as people instead of a perp or a suspect, and treat them like human beings instead of just some other bad dude. And they'd actually listen to the conversation. Like, I read another story in Sacramento, or maybe not Sacramento, but it was out here up north, where there was a guy who teaches the officers how to de-escalate situations. He saw some officers getting out of hand, being way more rough with protesters than they should be. He walks over to them, with his hands up, like trying to talk to officers, talk them down, and they shot him with the beanbag. They shot him a couple times in the groin. He had to have emergency surgery, and he may not be able to have kids again. And he's like, they don't know who they're dealing with. I work with the police chief on a regular basis to teach you guys how to de-escalate situations. What is that training even doing when you think about it? When it comes to something like that, like, you shot a dude who had his hands up, who was trying to talk to you.
Hey,
It's baffling. Like, and that's one of many stories that we've seen through these protests. Like, we've seen them literally arrest a black FBI agent.
that was the thing that really, like, this whole situation has been shaking, right? It's one of those things that, like, as you're looking at it, you kind of self-reflect and go, how is this the world we live in? But the simple fact that I'm sure that FBI agent was trying to tell them in some predetermined way, right? I would only assume, and I'm not the smartest guy in the block, right? I understand that. But wouldn't you think that there was some kind of safe word or setup or code or something that you would be able to use in that situation that FBI agent was probably trying to use? Like, you would think, right? Like, there should be some kind of interagency cooperation. Again, this is just me assuming, but if you know, like, hey, the FBI are in this area, they have people undercover, here's the thing they're going to say, right? They're going to repeatedly ask me about apricots. Okay. At some point in time, like, how does that not compute? Like, there has to be something, right? And I just don't understand how just blatantly disrespectful that you continually to see people happening. What I love about what Dev was saying about the cameras is now the police are the ones being policed. And I think that this is something that, if it doesn't happen soon, I think body cams should be required. And the moment your body cam goes off, you were suspended for a week and it's a full investigation, right? If you turn that thing off at all during a shift, nope. We need to know what's going on. Like, there has to be a reason this thing's being turned off. That's not good.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I've never understood why they would ever go off. Doesn't make any sense. And it's funny. I was watching something with Trevor Noah where the cops, like, their body cams show them planting evidence in Maryland. Several different instances of it. It's like, okay, how do you have this happen several times? This is exactly why we have the body cam. So when you turn it off, something ain't right.
yeah.
And like you said, that should be a definite suspension without pay, week-long investigation, because if you're on the up and up and you're doing what you were sworn in to do, there should be no reason for you to even feel any kind of way about turning your body cam off. It should be like, yeah, because not only does the body cam police you, it also protects you from when the actual suspects, who are bad people, are getting out of line and doing things they shouldn't be. You have that video as proof as to why you had to do what you had to do.
Yeah.
But when you turn that off, you lose all accountability. Accountability.
Credibility. Right?
Credibility. Yeah, sorry. Yes, credibility.
I was like, yeah, like, if I'm sitting down and talking to an officer and I have all your footage, I can watch it. Like, that makes you would seem credible. Whereas if you're like, yours turns off at the 2-minute mark and does not turn back on. Like, that's when you sit there kind of going, I no longer trust you. Like, I feel like the reason you turned it off is, this, this, and this. The thing that I had, one of my students and I were talking about body cams, and he was like, well, what about when they go to the bathroom? I'm like, homie, it's not like a panoramic view. Like, it looks straight. Like, unless your chest is bent to a 90-degree angle when you go to the bathroom, you're probably fine. Right? So I don't think even that would be an issue. So it's one of those things that I'd like to see. I'm going to be pushing for it more. Like, I was about to say, I'd like to see the officials push. No, that was the thing that I realized when all this went down, was that I can no longer just relax and say, I hope they fix that. No, I have to now make it part of what I do in my daily. I've already emailed the police chief in our district and said, hey, my name is Coach Mahoney. Here's where I work. Here are the people that I work with. I want to find out who's teaching morality and ethics to these officers. I want to know what kind of training happens. And I've gotten 2 or 3 really great emails back. And he says, listen, when things slow down, I would love to have this conversation with you and your kids. It's great. Thank you. Right. Yeah. So that was just something that when I just was about to say it, I was like, nope, that's no longer the way this works. It's no longer, I hope they fix it. It's how am I going to help them fix this?
Absolutely. So. Speaking on that, you wrote a letter to someone, Delvin. Who did you write a letter to?
My governor.
Governor. There we go.
I wrote a letter to the governor of Florida asking what does he plan on doing about this and what's his action plan on stopping police brutality in Florida, because he's in charge. And then, like, the buck stops at him. Like, at some point, legislation needs to be passed on, like, when we have situations that happen like this, there needs to be consequences for it. Like, if it's a blatant murder, like what we saw, that should be called a hate crime. I strongly believe that. And I strongly believe that if these cops are going to go out and do things like this that are blatantly killing young African Americans, young minorities, period, it should be labeled as such, a hate crime. Because that's what it is. It's no bare bones about it. Like, there needs to be laws in place to stop police officers from doing these acts. And as of right now, there's too many loopholes for cops to get through, so they don't have to have any consequences for their actions. And that's a big problem. Like, who's policing the police? Who's watching the watchmen?
What I love about what you just said, DC, is the fact that during the pandemic, during March, April, and May, I would get an alert on my phone because we subscribed to find out what DeSantis was going to announce, right? What's the governor going to say about when are my schools opening back up? When can I get back to work? When can my kids come train again? And I would say that we were having 2 or 3 a week where he or the mayor from Orlando were speaking. I have not heard one of them have a press conference in the last 8 days. Not one word from the mayor of Orlando or the governor of Orlando. Nothing. They can talk about the pandemic and data and pull all these people together, but all of a sudden, radio silence. And that just boggles my mind.
The only thing I've heard from anyone thus far in terms of these boycotts has been the mayor of Miami and the chief of police saying that all the riots that were happening down here were not from Florida residents. That's the only thing. They were like, we arrested 22 people. None of them were for down here.
No one was local.
Yeah, it's so funny how that's just like the running thing. Like, everywhere I've seen, like, everybody who gets arrested for this stuff is from out of state. Like, that's just so baffling. Like,
Yeah.
Why would that be the case?
I have no idea. It just makes no sense. It's like that doesn't seem off. You don't think that's a little weird that everybody is apparently from out of state? Like, it feels like it's just another one of those distractions. Like, it's trying to distract you from the real issue. And that's something that we've seen time and time again from this administration. It's always trying to distract you to keep you from knowing what's really going on and focused on the issues. And I'm glad that that's not happening. The fact that we're in day 8 of this, like, we're not letting up. Like, this ain't going away until we fix it. And I'm so just moved by that. The fact that we're not allowing little distractions to get in the way of trying to actually have sweeping changes. Like, I saw today, like, that we're actually like cutting some of the budget to the police out in LAPD. Like they're taking away, I think it was like 250 million from them to then put into programs for the inner city and things of that nature. And then I saw what the police, what the police budget is, and it's like billions of dollars. So taking a measly little 250 million is like nothing to them. Like their budget is so insane. It's like how much of that budget goes into like training for morality or being able to de-escalate a situation or working with the community. Like I should know the cops that are in my area. Like they should know who I am. They should understand who I am. So if something does happen, there's some level of understanding between the people who police my area and who I am. I think that is something that is sorely missing nowadays. Like the actual interactions you have with the cops, it shouldn't be like I don't know you from Adam. It should be there should be a little more familiarity, which I know is hard on like the grand scale, but we need to be able to get back to that type of situation to where I actually know who you are as an officer. You know who I am in some way, shape, or form. So there's not this automatic like I don't trust you, you don't trust me, and the situation gets escalated because you don't have your escalation training, and I'm worried because I'm black. You know?
I will go a step further and say that the vetting process for cops should be more detailed. Like, I want the best of the best to be cops. And when I say the best of the best, if they're the best of the best, I don't care what they get paid. But I want people who are going to go in there and do the right thing 9 out of 10 times. Like nobody's perfect. Mm-hmm. But I want cops who are going to watch over communities, not just be biased to one particular race or not. I want cops who look after the neighborhood that they patrol in and not just wanting to just arrest people because they want to arrest people. I think that goes a long way. And we have too many bad seeds in law enforcement right now. And I know people are like, oh, not all cops are bad. That is true. Not all cops are bad, but enough cops are bad for situations like this to happen. Mm-hmm. And I feel like one innocent life lost is one too many.
Yeah.
And I think there's a sentiment to that is something we need to look at as a whole, because I couldn't watch the video the first 3 times that I tried. Right? I couldn't. I was like, I don't enjoy movies with torture in them. Like it just makes me sick to my stomach. The one time I think it was Call of Duty Black Ops or Black Ops 2 had a really bad torture scene. I just turned the 360 off, said, nope. Nah, I'm not ready for this. Like this is just not what there's a reason I love sports. Sports are fun and predictable. They are games. Like it's the thing I love about them. And, so when I finally watched it, I got really mad at 2 people, right? Like I got really mad at the officer who was standing there watching. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why did you not just walk over, tap him on the shoulder? Like, dude, he's telling you he can't breathe. It's been 8 minutes, right? It's 1/3 of a SpongeBob episode. You have been on this guy's neck. Okay, let's get up. Let's put him against the car. Like let's move. How do you stand there and just look? And like turn your head to the side, like that killed me. But the person I got more and more mad at, and yes, I was of course mad at the officer doing it, but it was the guy recording. Like I got so upset with after you've recorded for let's say 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and this guy's still in this dude's throat. Why wouldn't you run and push him off? You know what I mean? And that's where my brain went, right? Like. If I'm in this situation, I'm seeing this, I'm not just standing there with my phone. I'm screaming and yelling, get off of his neck, right? You're pleading. You're saying, no, please, officer, get off his neck. And at the point when you realize that he's not listening anymore, what are you going to do about it? Now, in my brain, I think I understand the reason I'm different, right? I'm the size of a house. Okay, I get that. My bench press is more than most people's families weigh together. I get that. Okay. So me wanting to charge in on something is kind of part of my brain, right? I'm a defensive lineman. Like charging in is kind of my thing. But I just couldn't understand why you could sit there with your phone out and record, but you couldn't go do something. And that just killed my spirit, because the more I think about it, how are we going to live in a world where we're okay to record, but we're not okay to step between? There was that video of that itty bitty little girl who stood in front of the young black guy who was kneeling. And I was like, where was that then? Like, why did it take massive riots and people having to die for us to be willing to step up and do the right thing instead of just recording on our phone? She didn't have her phone out when that happened. She just got in front. So I don't know.
That's a tough one, because I can say that, yeah, you are a large man, and part of that is also white privilege, because if you run in, they're going to take a second before they even think to fire their gun. Mayor Delvin does that. Now you've got several dead black males, and that's going to be twisted to make it seem like we were part of a gang or we were part of an uprising or something. So now the use of deadly force is authorized. In that situation, quite honestly, I think that the person recording was doing the only thing they knew that they could, was to make sure that this gets documented. And as much as like you'd want to jump into that situation, a lot of times it has the chance to actually just make it worse and backfire, because now you've become aggressive towards the police, and now they have even more reason to decide that they want to be aggressive and act more violently. And the thing is, it's a tough situation. Like, you want to jump in and be like, get off, you know?
I would give you something even scarier. Who do you call on the cops are doing something?
Yeah.
That's the terrifying thing. Like, you call 911 so they bring more cops to do the same thing?
Yeah.
That is a scary thought.
It's terrifying. The people that you think are supposed to protect you, you can't call for protection. And I think that's why a lot of things in inner cities go unreported, because how are they going to protect me when they're not doing it now? Why would we suspect them to protect us at all?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of leads to the stigmatism of they're the bad guys. And they get looked at as the bad guys because we see stuff like this happening too often. And it builds that distrust towards them.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when all this is said and done, police need to earn our trust again. They need to go out of their way to earn our trust. I'm not even talking about just, we're going to go play basketball with you one day, or no. You have to work to earn our trust. You've broken that trust for so long, in that bond that you should have in these communities. You've broken that. And you need to heal that. You need to fix that. And I think every police station in the United States should look at this case and say, you know what? We're not doing something right. We need to fix this.
Those cops that got 17 complaints against them, maybe we really need to take a look at that and see why this guy keeps getting complaints. Like, it can't just be, people are just, a-holes and want to report the police. Like, no, there's got to be something underlying to why this guy keeps having police reports filed on him. And all of the cops, the quote-unquote good cops, like, y'all got to stop standing idly by. Y'all got to speak up and call this stuff out. Because that's the other issue, is just that there's nobody on the inside who's constantly holding their brothers to their standard. Yeah. So just to swing the conversation to just a little different, because we all play games, we're all like, PSVG is play some video games, and we're all kind of in that gamer sphere and that audience. What do you guys feel about the different brand responses that we're getting? Like, you're seeing a lot of the companies come out and they'll have their response about Black Lives Matter and why we stand with you and all of that. You got Ben and Jerry's that made one hell of a statement.
We actually are only buying Ben and Jerry's ice cream now because not because of their statement. Like their statement was good, but because they were in the protest, right? They put their money where their mouth was. They donated money. They went out and walked and then got arrested doing it, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm not a big ice cream fan, but I am now. Like you will be the only brand in our house. Congratulations, guys! Like you just got our money. So
I will give props to Wendy's. They got flack because I think it came out that somebody who I think he's an owner, a few owners of Wendy's donated to the Trump campaign, and they got a lot of flack for it. And then they straight out came out and said, you know what? We're going to show you how much we appreciate. And they straight up said it. If it wasn't for the black community supporting us, we wouldn't be where we're at today. And they're like, we're going to donate multitude of money to black colleges, black schools. This is going to be our thing now. They put up and shut up. And that's appreciated. I think more companies should do that. And sometimes you have to put up and shut up. And they did that. It says a lot. Now, I appreciate that Sony and Xbox came out there and said what they said, and Sony got flack for it. Like people were like, all lives matter, so like we don't care. I like what I'm seeing from these companies standing up for black lives and not taking crap for it.
Whoever's running the Bloodborne account is a freaking genius. Like I love it. I love the Bloodborne account. that has been one of my favorite things that I've ever seen. Like on a whole different level. They were just like, don't buy our game then. If you have an issue, don't play our game. And I love it. Because how many times you can have any game publisher or anybody who's talking about their game go, yeah, don't play our game. We're done with you. Like that was next level. I loved it because they really showed like we don't care what you entitled people think. Like we're going to do what's right, and that's really good to see. So
even Target for that matter, like people were at Target about how their store got burned down and stuff like that, and Target straight up said, "Our store is not more important than human lives."
Right. Yep. See, he was like, "I can rebuild the building. We can't give him his life back." You know, that's a huge statement. The Nickelodeon thing. Oh my God, that was so good because they not only had silence for 8 minutes, they had a whole like tribute to it. And there were so many people that were like, my kid shouldn't see this. I don't want my kid to have to deal with that and yada, yada, yada. And so many of the responses were like, must be nice because my children, when they walk out the door, have to deal with that. So for you to be inconvenienced by a little 8 minutes and then an explanation about what's going on and that Nickelodeon stands with Black lives, like miss me with that. You don't like it? Don't watch this. Get out of here. You don't deserve it. So a lot of the brand responses I've really appreciated seeing that they're not only are they standing with the movement and the fact that something needs to change, but they're also donating and using their resources to actually further it. It could be something to just, make a little statement and then not say anything again, or just like, oh, we need to put out a statement, But when you have companies like Wendy's who not only put out a statement, but also, back it up with acts, then that's something that's special, And I really, really appreciate that. And it's just been really telling, seeing some of the people and their responses, oh, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. I'm not playing your games anymore. It's like, well, then don't. You don't deserve to, Yeah. It's really interesting. And with that, it's like, so what are you guys doing like about your mental health? Like we had a situation in our Discord where, people were talking and, it's just a very, very tense time. And sometimes you just got to pull back, This kind of stuff can be very, very overwhelming, Trying to be positive, trying to figure out what to do with your anger and your emotions, and trying to also call people out. Like, I'm not in a place where, certain things are okay, but maybe this person is okay with that type of stuff, and that's how they heal. Like, how are you guys navigating like those spaces? How are you guys maintaining your mental health and making sure that you're not just falling into a pit of sadness or despair, or not going too deep into social media to where you can't pull yourself back? Like, what are you guys doing to like kind of combat that? Or is that even an issue for you?
I didn't combat it. I was in a dark, dark place, like a really dark place. I was angry. I was mad. I wanted to straight up mess people up. I
Mhm.
was furious. I wasn't taking crap from anybody. I was short. I was just so much full of rage. I want to say all the whole week when this was going on, and I think the only thing that literally pulled me out of it is I was getting ready to record an episode. I don't remember what show it was. It might have been PSXP. Or it might have been after I recorded PSXP. It had to be. And I found a note that my son wrote
Yeah.
saying all these things about how I'm a great dad, I'm a great podcaster, I'm a great role model and stuff. And seeing that made me realize how important I am to him, how important I am to others, and I have to get myself out of this funk because I was not there. I'm not even being joking. I was not there. I was furious. I was angry, and I was at a place where I might not have came back. Like I might have did something stupid. And fortunately, I had my son and my family, my kids there to kind of pull me out of that. But I know there's a lot of people who don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
It was scary.
I hear you. I'm glad that your son was able to bring that levity to you and be able to help that, because they definitely bring a certain levity, especially for us, because like we got to do this for them.
Yeah.
Like we all have to have, well, you and I, you have to have that talk, like with our kids, and it's so irritating. It's so frustrating to, like, whenever I see my son get upset and kind of rage out, I'm like, you can't do that everywhere, because unfortunately the color of your skin walks into the room and into any situation before you ever do. And if they don't know you and you see that, that automatically makes you a threat and a target. So the fact that I have to police my son in a way that is like just not fair to him. He should be able to be upset and show emotion and rage out. He's 4. But the fact that in the back of my mind, I'm constantly thinking, okay, I have to find ways to get him to understand that you don't get to do that. That shit sucks. It sucks, and it's heartbreaking to have to really think about that and have to bring him up in that way. And I'm praying that changes come, and that have to be his situation with his kids down
there. Other tragedies made this more real for me. It was maybe a week and a half ago, and I only texted Dev. I didn't text anybody else, and I just told him I was going through something that was something I never ever contemplated having to go through. Right, like
Take your time.
I've only ever had one pet until we got Bear, and he was our second. So my first pet was this dog named Daisy that I've had for 9 years. And then we got Bear, and then we got Roca. And Roca had passed away a while ago, but Roca was my sister's dog that I inherited, so it wasn't the same. But I've had Daisy for 9 years. And we found out last week she has cancer. And I just remember being just like this little furry thing that I talk to every day. Like literally that's my therapist. Like that's who, when we go for walks, when I'm working on the car, when I'm hurting, like we just talk it out. And to know that I'm not going to have my dog, like just kind of kicked me in the teeth. And then I go, if I care so much about this dog, why can't police officers care about people? Right? Like, how is this not easy to understand? And that's when I started writing letters and saying, what can I do to make sure that we're being morally honest and taking care of people? Because if I can love a dog this much, like, how are we not able to love all people this much, right? And it just kind of, that bad thing pushed me to kind of go, why are we not standing up for people? Right? Why are we not doing more?
Yep. This is a human rights issue.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I just want to be treated like every other human. That's it. Is that too much to ask for? Why do I have to riot and protest to just be treated like a human instead of an animal and not be called a thug by the president of the United States?
Yeah.
Shouldn't be that hard. It really shouldn't.
Or get the military called out on you.
Done. Man.
I think this
This
is
has
a wake
been-
up call for America
It absolutely
in
is.
terms of everything. Like, look at our past 3 months and take a look at it. Take a gander of everything that went on and things that could have been avoided and things that could have been done better.
Yeah.
Take stock in that. And definitely remember that election time. Like whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, look at your government, look at your senators, look at your governors. Think about what they did for you during the pandemic and what they did for you during this.
Mm-hmm.
And make the responsible choice and decision of whether they deserve your vote or not.
I think that was the thing that really floored me, and I'm so glad I follow as many WNBA players as I do. McLeod from, I think she's with the Mystics right now. She was like, no, we're not doing Blackout Tuesday. We're not doing that. That's a voting day. We're voting. Like, do not turn off social media. Do not, like, I don't care if you post a thing, but go vote. And I remember then she posted that they had won an election that was previously only held by somebody that was everybody would deemed as this racist, horrible human being, had finally gotten de-seated in one of the areas that she voted in. And I remember just kind of sitting there going, that is like one of the most manipulative things I think I've ever seen, because I don't know who started it, but I love the fact that we have voices who are calling for votes. Like, no, we're not doing that. We are voting. And then Tennessee, so I had been debating sending one of my kids up there. I just didn't feel safe. And then Tennessee had literally said, you can now vote from mail-in ballots. Everyone, that's just how it is this year. We're changing it. And I was like, okay, yes, that's what we're talking about. Like that, those are the changes we're looking for. Like, we're making it so that it's equitable and fair for everybody. And we're not alienating anyone. So
yeah,
that was kind of cool.
It's really cool. I mean, like, we're still in a pandemic. We still have to deal with Corona. My county had 72 more cases today. They had, I think, 42 yesterday. So yeah, don't let them get over with this nonsense. You can't mail in a ballot stuff. Like, we need to be able to do that.
Delvin, what we had 2,000 new cases yesterday in Norland.
Yep.
So we're back on the trending the wrong way.
Right.
Also, people were going out before the riots even started, so that's not even an excuse.
Way before the riots. Way before the riots. I remember. I don't want to get too far off topic, but I remember my wife only sends me out to do the shopping, and literally we have like a whole list of things I do where I wipe my hands before I get out of the car. I wipe my hands before I get back in the car. Like, everything's done through the trunk and me wiping stuff. And we've been very, very safe with it, but she doesn't go out because we're keeping her away from the baby. And I literally drop the bags off, go shower, unload everything, shower again. Like, it's our first kid, so we're being very protective. And I remember the first time I went out and we had set up these new rules, and I have my face mask on, and I watch a car of 25 people. Like, it was one of those big the vans, and they're just piling out of it. And there's a truck next to them, they're piling out of it. And they all go inside together, and they're grabbing briquettes and everything, and they're talking about going to, I think, Cocoa, the beach. And I'm just sitting there going, is nobody listening to what we're being told to do? Like, and that was in March.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking April or May after we've done it for, like, we're talking that was in March. So
I can't tell you how many times I've seen people, like when I go to like pick up my medicine for my grandmother and stuff like that at the CVS, I see truckloads of people getting ready to go to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
it's not like multiple trucks,
Yep.
with coolers and everything, like
Towing a boat.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, as I've seen it, I'm just like, if anybody tries to blame this on the riots, I'm just going to go, yes, the riots may not have helped, but you guys were out in public before. Like, this isn't new.
I'm blaming it on the asshats that decided to storm the Capitol building fully armed. Y'all gonna complain about haircuts, but we can't peacefully protest about people getting killed?
Mm-hmm.
Miss me with that. Absolute nonsense.
Oh.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But yeah. That's all I got right now. That's all I got for today. I just wanted to, bring you guys on, have a discussion about this, and just kind of give us space to like talk about it, because I figured if any show was gonna do it, it was gonna be the OT. And I knew I wanted to have Delvin along for that conversation. And I'm glad we were able to sit down and like really talk about this and just put it out there. And like I said, we've been talking about it all week in PSVG, and I'm glad that we're all on the same page. Like, we're all just sick of it. We're sick of the racism. We're sick of the division that we have seen for the last 4 years. This country has just gotten more and more divided. And it's time for that to stop. Time for this to be over. Black Lives Matter. Write your congressman. Write your senator. Go out and vote. Let's take the power back for us, because the police are here to protect us. That's what they're supposed to do. Find out everything that you can vote for. Find out. Actually read, get involved, and vote for the people that are going to make change. And if they're not making change, be vocal about them not making those changes. You want to see the change, you got to be the change you want to see.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Difficult, but simple. So, any closing remarks that you want to have? That you want to say anything you want to say, Coach?
Yeah. So if you are a OT fan, more than likely means you're a sports fan. What I have been calling for the families from my teams, my students, is go to hbcusports.com. That's hbcusports.com. And do two things for me. One, on the top right hand corner, there's a tab that says donate, and you can donate to help send money to help those programs and help those sports teams. And that's for all their sports. But the second thing I've asked is go pick a favorite team and someone to buy a shirt for them and to cheer for. I have just ordered a shirt for me and my wife for North Carolina A&T that we will be making our team that we'll be cheering for and trying to watch play as much as we can in the next coming year. And that's kind of the thing I'm pushing people to do, because I think in this time, there's some things we can start paying attention to. And there are a lot of athletes at those schools who don't get the recognition because they're going to historically black colleges and universities. And so I want to start sending some love that way. And so I challenge you, if it's $10, awesome. If it's, more than that, amazing. But, send a donation to help those teams develop facilities that they deserve, and pick a team to cheer for and watch the world change. So
here it is. What about you, Delvin? Any closing remarks?
Nah, just I'm trying to word this right. Be the change that you want to see. Simple as that. Like, if you want change in this country, be that change. Start with yourself. That's the simplest way to help us and empower us. Like, push forth change, whether it's in legislation, whether it's in your neighborhoods. Just be a positive influence on not only your life, but others that you may know. I think that goes a long way.
Absolutely. Yeah. On this show, which will probably go up on our YouTube, there will be a link, just your basic global link to donate to the Black Lives Matter movement. But outside of that, get involved in your community. Find out where you can donate in your community to help make it better. It's sometimes difficult to just donate to just like a nebulous fund, but there's always some good you can do in your own community. So be the change you want to see in your community and start there. Find out how you can get involved. Donate, whether it be, if you don't have money, donate your time. If you can just be a part of your community trying to help make things better, find out where you can get involved and what you can do and be involved. And call out the terrible stuff that you see. If somebody is doing something that you know they shouldn't, call them out. Call it out. Yeah. If you're upset, voice that. Let people know. And above all else, just love one another. Like it's so much easier to love than it is to hate. You got to hold on to hate. You got to, foster that anger, but love is just, it's free. It's easy to give. So love, just shed love, spread love, share love. That's all I got. And as Coach would say, that's game over.
Shut up and sit down.